My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And the purpose of today's video is to give you a market update for what's going on in the Anchorage market. This continues to be a pretty interesting market, and we'd make sure that we provide you the most accurate, up-to-date information on what's unfolding in this market. But before we do get started, do make sure you give this video a like and do subscribe so you can receive more information like this in the future. Now, let's go and jump into today's market update, looking first at the residential, then the condos, then the multifamily market, and then we'll go ahead and summarize it all at the end for you. Now, first off, what we're seeing for the active inventory for the residential market is that the inventory went from about 300 properties that were on the market last year for all of Anchorage, and now it's at 165 in the most recent analysis that we can provide. The next thing that we see is that the number of properties that actually sold, despite the inventory being roughly half of what it was the year before, is that it actually is about the same or slightly above from where it was this time last year. For example, the number of sold properties was 181 last year. This year it's 188. So not a huge difference, but that is significant because the inventories had such a drastic reduction. The next thing that we're seeing is that the average sold price for residential properties in Anchorage, not surprisingly, has gone up. It was about $424,000 this time last year, and now it's about $440,000. Now, this means that we are seeing about a 3.6% increase for the average sold price in Anchorage, which not entirely unusual. You do see kind of a regular appreciation there, so not a huge jump there percentage-wise, but obviously that's a pretty big difference if you happen to be selling your home recently. The next market we're going to take a look at is the condos. Now, for the condo market, what we're seeing is that the number of active properties went from about 261 from this time last year down to exactly 100 now. If you've been looking for a condo, you can kind of feel that squeeze a little bit, not quite as much on the residential side, but it's definitely there. So yes, number one, inventory is down for condos in Anchorage. The next thing we're seeing for condos is that the number of properties that actually sold has increased by about 12 from 80 the year before to 92. So that's proportionally a pretty good increase for the number of sold properties, despite the fact the inventory is way down. We'll talk more about that in the summary. Now, finally, for the condos, what we're seeing is for the first time in a couple of years at this point, we're seeing actually a decrease in values for condos, because it went from about 230,600 to about 230,200, if I recall correctly. So that is a negative 0.14% loss for the average sold prices for condos. Now, we'll talk about more about why this might be in the summary, but that is first time we've seen any kind of a negative appreciation for average sold prices for really anything in Anchorage for a couple of years at this point. Let's take a break here real quick. For those of you who've been watching for a little bit, you do know that I host a podcast in addition to being the host for the Alaska Realtor YouTube channel. The name of that podcast is Alaskan Journey, and we do talk about what it's like moving up here to Alaska, and we also talk about things related to the real estate industry, like interest rates and the local economy and stuff like that as well. If that's something you're interested in, check that out down below. And if you're looking at getting your home on the market, do reach out to me through my website down below. And in the little comment section, just say seller guide, and I'll go ahead and send you a free copy of the seller guide to kind of get you started and seeing what it looks like to get your home on the market. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on in the multifamily market in Anchorage. Now, on the multifamily side, it's kind of a similar story to what we've seen across the board, at least for the inventory. It's really been cut in half because it was about 132 properties this time last year. Now it is 72. So inventory continues to really get compressed down for multifamily properties in Anchorage. Despite the inventory really getting compressed down like that, we are seeing a slight increase for the number of sold properties that are multifamily in Anchorage. And we'll talk more about why that is in the summary, but a big part of it is that the rents are going up, which do make these investment properties more appealing, despite the fact that the overall sold prices of properties are going up. Last but not least, we see that the average sold price for multifamily properties in Anchorage went from approximately $414,000 this time last year to about $497,000 this year. Now, before we get too excited, keep in mind that is 1 month, and I really don't like looking at just 1 month and trying to summarize an entire market based off of that, because in a pool this small, you can have small changes either way that really throws off all the numbers. We had a couple of $1 million 30-plex properties that sold during this time. That can throw off all the numbers, but that's what we're seeing. And yeah, that's favorable if you are a seller and you're selling a multifamily property. Now let's go and summarize everything real quick. On the residential side, we continue to see inventory remains low, and that is likely to remain the case really for the next year or so here, just because the demand is high, and while we have a lot of people that would like to sell, they're hesitant to just jump into it right now because, hey, I can sell my place really easily, but I'm going to be on the flip side of this in trying to find a home as soon as I sell my property. So for some people, that is something that they have to think about. If you're in that boat, certainly do reach out, give me a call, and we'll talk and see how we can mitigate that and come up with a solution for you. If you are a buyer, this looks daunting because you're seeing all these prices going up and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm paying so much more. And really the thing you need to be looking at are the interest rates, because very few people pay their entire loan all the way through anyway. Secondly is that the interest rates really do give you more leverage to be able to stretch your dollar further. And as soon as those interest rates start going up, we're going to see kind of a drawdown of demand, just because fewer people will be able to qualify for these higher prices, which is going to start seeing kind of a cooling down effect for this market. It's not going to be that the average sold prices are dropping or the market's falling, the bottom's falling out of the market or anything like that. It's really that there were a lot of emotionally charged decisions made in an environment like this, and some of these properties were never really worth what they were paid for. If you are staying put for about 4 or 5 years, shouldn't really be that big of a problem depending on how much you paid for the property, but just something to keep in mind if you are a buyer. Just because there's low interest rates doesn't mean you just bet the farm and put everything on it. It's going to really depend on the property and what it is that you should be comfortable offering for it. So that's on the residential side. Condos. For the first time, we're seeing kind of a drawdown on the average sold price there. Is this a sign of the market kind of cooling down in that sector? I would say it probably is. It's a little early in the year to tell though, so let's not get too worked up over that just yet. We'll definitely keep an eye on that. That's kind of a promising sign in some ways. This market does need to cool down a little bit because it's not good for the health of a long-term health of the market for it to be appreciating at this rate, because it's not sustainable and it makes housing unaffordable. So that's on the residential side, or on the condo side. Now for the multifamilies, what we're seeing over here, like I mentioned before, they're still going to be selling really well in a market like this despite the prices going up, because investors will sit down, they look at the interest rate that they're going to be paying, and a lot of them are going to be buying for cash flow, because too many people bought for appreciation back in the 2008, 2009 bubble that popped, and so they understand the value of cash flow. Cash flow is a lot easier if you have a low interest rate, and that's why a lot of investors right now are looking to snap up an investment property and take advantage of these low interest rates while they can. So this has been your market update. I sure hope it's been useful for you. If you have any questions, do feel free to reach out to me at either my website, Facebook, Instagram, and I'd be more than happy to answer your questions as best I can. Please don't email me. I do my very best, but I've got about 16,000 unanswered emails right now, and you're going to be one of 16,000. If you email me, your odds are way better if you reach out to me on my website or Facebook or Instagram. But other than that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.